Okay, so welcome to our panel on climate change. I'm Dr. Andrew Fiala, and I am the director of the Ethics Center at Fresno State and a professor of philosophy here. I'd just like to do a land acknowledgement to get us started. The Fresno State campus sits in the midst of the San Joaquin Valley, a valley rich in the traditions and representation of Native American peoples and cultures. We're grateful to be in the traditional homeland of the Ocuts and Mono peoples, whose diverse tribal communities share stewardship over this land. I'd like to thank the Fresno State Alumni Association, who is hosting the Zoom for us and helped us set up the registration system. And I'd also like to thank Ben Cruz, our student assistant for the Ethics Center this semester, who's helping us behind the scenes. And I'd also like to thank John Minkler and Steve Morris, our colleagues at the Civic Education Center. This was John's idea, really. So thank you again, John, for all your help on this. This event is part of our regular ethics lecture series. We do a dozen or so of these events every year, panel discussions, lectures, interviews, and so on. The goal of this is to inspire critical thinking, to model civil discourse, and to provide a chance for the community and our students especially to think about ethical issues. So as you know, this is a panel, we're going to discuss climate change and environmental issues, and especially with a focus on youth here in the Central Valley. Each panelist is going to speak for about 5 minutes, and then we'll have plenty of time for Q&A and discussion. We'll have the panelists talking to each other, and then we ask our audience to post questions to the Q&A or to the chat. Q&A is actually easier. And we'll do our best to get to your questions and I'll try to help guide the conversation a bit. Let me just remind you that we want to practice civil discourse in all of this, and civility and kindness and critical thinking. So if you disagree with something you hear, that's okay, but do it compassionately, okay? So now let me introduce each speaker, and then we'll get started. I'll get out of the way and let the speakers talk. So our first speaker will be Mona Cummings, who is CEO of Tree Fresno, which is transforming the Central Valley with more trees and green space. She was a team leader for the AmeriCorps National Civilian Community Corps and worked as an Africa Regional Director for Terare Trent International, which created educational opportunities for girls. After Kamryn, Mona, we're gonna hear from Kamryn Kubose, who is an associate for the California Product Stewardship Council. She's developing a new nonprofit, Central Valley Young Environmental Advocates, to provide educational and networking opportunities and prepare the next generation of environmental leaders. After Kamryn, we're going to hear from Keyshaun White, who at age 21 is a veteran environmental advocate. He started monitoring Fresno air quality 7 years ago, and he's learned that there was a 25-year difference in life expectancy between Fresno residents who live on the north side of town versus in the southwest side of town. After Keyshaun, we're going to hear from Destiny Rodriguez, who is a community relations manager with the Climate Center. She worked on environmental issues in the Central Valley for 15 years with the Coalition for Clean Air, National Parks Conservation Association, and the San Joaquin River Parkway and Conservation Trust. And then finally, we're going to hear from Feng, who is a master's student in geology at Fresno State, also a member of Fresno State's Sustainability Task Force and Sustainability Club. She's a leader on campus and in the CSU system, working on sustainability tracking and reporting for the Association for the Advancement of Sustainability in Higher Education. So we've asked the panelists to consider 3 guiding questions. First, what environmental issues affect youth in the Central Valley? Second, how does global climate change affect us and future generations? And then third, what projects are available for young people and how can young folks get involved and make a contribution to some of these issues? So we'll begin with Mona. Mona Cummings, the floor is yours. Thank you all for joining me.
Can you hear me? And you can see my presentation?
Looks
Lovely.
good, Mona.
So we'll go ahead and get started, and thank you for that introduction, Andrew. It's great to be part of this panel. I want to add to my background, just because it's relevant to what we're speaking about today. I have a year of AmeriCorps and CCC team leader experience out of Washington, D.C., and 8 years of Peace Corps experience, including 3 years as a volunteer in Portuguese-speaking Africa, working in forestry, and then also 5 years as a recruiter out of the San Francisco office. And that's how I ended up in Fresno in 2007. So since 1985, Tree Fresno, a local NGO here in the Fresno area, has focused on the expansion of the urban tree canopy, which we do by engaging the community in the planting of large canopy drought-tolerant trees. At Tree Fresno, we work under the premise that global climate change is affecting us now, and it is affecting our undertreed communities even more. Why trees? As one of the founders, John Valentino, told me soon after I joined Tree Fresno, in our minds back in 1985, and still it really hasn't changed much, a large canopy tree can serve at least as part of the solution, an ideal technology to address many of society's most pressing issues. It's true that trees help clean the air, the water, prevent soil erosion, provide shade, cool temperatures, help us save on utility bills, and reduce stress and violence in neighborhoods, increase property values, provide homes for birds and other animals, serve as windbreaks, and capture dust and pollutants. Every tree works to sequester greenhouse gases, but some do more work than others. In this case, bigger is better. If trees reduce atmospheric levels of greenhouse gases by transforming the gases into living matter, it stands to reason that the bigger the tree is, the more carbon it's storing. In Central California, a large evergreen oak will have sequestered nearly 9 tons of carbon dioxide after 50 years. And longevity is also important. The carbon dioxide that's stored in a tree can only remain trapped as long as the tree is alive. Once the tree dies and begins to decompose, the greenhouse gases it has sequestered will return to the atmosphere. Trees that live longer, therefore, do more to combat climate change than shorter-lived trees. Now, my role as CEO of Tree Fresno is to spearhead the planning process that results in the more trees being planted and cared for on the grounds of schools, parks, public spaces, and even private properties. The trees bring us an array of benefits. Our largest grants, like those from CAL FIRE urban and community forestry programs, target the reduction of greenhouse gases, which has been found to contribute to climate change. Tree Fresno has lots of partners in expanding the urban tree canopy, including cities, counties, public agencies, nonprofits, CBOs, private industry. We actively partner in the interest of planting more trees. What guides our work? The majority of our planting is done in communities defined as disadvantaged per Cal and Virus Green. Disadvantaged communities are targeted for investment of proceeds from the state's cap and trade program. The cap and trade program is a key element of California's strategy to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Investments are aimed at improving quality of health, quality of life, economic opportunity, especially in California's most burdened communities, while at the same time reducing pollution that causes climate change. This focus on disadvantaged communities, or what Tree Fresno terms undertreed or under canopied communities, requires just a touch more clarification. We seek to increase conditions of tree equity in cities throughout the valley, including the city of Fresno. What is tree equity? According to American Forests, the oldest national conservation organization in the country, trees are vital to the health, wealth, and climate resiliency of all people who live in cities. But a map of tree cover in America's cities is too often also a map of income and race. This is due in part to redlining, which is a discriminatory practice commonplace from the 1930s to about 1968, where banks, insurance companies would refuse or limit loans, mortgages, insurance, et cetera, with specific geographic areas, especially to inner city neighborhoods. And this legacy exists today. So in these communities, you see less trees, less investment. A recent study of the state of California has shown the average tree canopy coverage in most urban areas is approximately 15%, with near to 30% being optimal for community benefit. In the Valley, many of our cities are lucky to hit 10%. In this photo, you see neighborhood volunteers planting for the City of Fresno's Clean Air Day event, which we held on October 6th at Sunset Community Center in Southwest Fresno. Volunteering to participate in tree planting and donating to organizations like Tree Fresno. These are ways that individuals can become active in fighting climate change locally. For each of our tree plantings, we plant anywhere from 10 to 200 trees. And you can be notified of these plantings via email when you sign up for our mailing list on our website at treefresno.org. Take notice of this before and after shot of Sunset Community Center. The photo on the left shows a landscape devoid of trees, and on the right shows 14 newly planted large canopy drought tolerant trees of mixed species with irrigation. We do not plant trees in the Valley without irrigation. We throw shade, as they say. So you can come and help plant trees on trails, at schools, in parks, along busy roadways, and surrounding industrial areas in Fresno. So please contact us today on social media or treefresno.org. Thank you.
Thank you, Mona. Would you mind putting those links in the chat while as this proceeds, if people want to get in touch with you?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, that's great. So next we're going to hear from Kamryn. Kamryn, the floor is yours.
Awesome, thank you. Let me share my screen. There we go. Okay, everybody. Thank you, Andrew, for inviting me to this talk, and thank you, Mona, for suggesting that I come join you guys. I was also part of AmeriCorps. I worked with Fresno State Office of Community and Economic Development. So a little bit about me. Born and raised in Fresno. I got my bachelor's in environmental science at UCLA in 2019, and I'm currently pursuing my master's in environmental policy and management at UC Davis. I have a background in green building design, a little bit in urban planning and product stewardship. So these are the organizations that I'm affiliated with. I'm currently working at the California Product Stewardship Council, and we're really based all across the state. Today, I'll be wearing my Central Valley Young Environmental Advocates hat. I'm the executive director of this new nonprofit. We're just getting started, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later. I'm also part of Zero Waste Youth USA, which is a volunteer-based organization that puts on a virtual conference, which we just had, just to educate and empower youth in their local communities to advocate for zero waste. So it's just kind of like touching over the questions that John Minkler posed to us. What environmental issues affect youth in the Central Valley? So here's a quote that I really like from Eric Corey Freed. He's an architect, I believe in Oregon. So if you plan for cities, cars, and traffic, you get cities, cars, and traffic. And yet if you plan for community and walkability and vibrancy, that's what you get. So I think that's really relevant, especially for Fresno. Fresno isn't built for for walkability and active transportation. So we definitely see that. I also, so as part of AmeriCorps, I wrote a report on sustainability initiatives that are happening in Fresno. And I looked at kind of like the urban design, kind of like a bird's eye view of Fresno, and found that there are less parks in lower income areas. And as we all know, West Fresno is, there's a lot of dump sites there. They experience a lot of water pollution and illness. So again, kind of tying in environmental justice, not to mention the actual geography of the Central Valley. We trap in all of the bad air. So how does global climate change affect us and future generations? Just from one of the main things that we're going to experience is biodiversity loss. So as it starts heating up, there's more extreme heat days. The local species in our area will move up latitude-wise as well as altitude-wise. We're going to be experiencing more extreme heat days. So here's a little screenshot of a recent newspaper article. Constantly breaking records. We're hearing this all the time. It's kind of scary. You know, we're hitting more extreme heat days and breaking more records that we didn't know existed. And again, there's larger fires. So there's more bad air quality days. And so with the recent bad air quality days a few months ago, I drove back into the valley and I was really shocked to see how bad the air quality was. I remember growing up, you know, we would have bad air quality days. It's unhealthy. You can't go out for PE. But I think now with more extreme wildfires, we're in a drought, it's becoming more prevalent. So what projects are available for youth to contribute? So one of the important things to do is to research and find advocacy groups to learn and act on issues. Find something that you're interested in. And you can also join local government meetings to stay up to date. Oftentimes they'll have public meetings. So at the bottom, you can see Fresno Council of Governments. They often pose a lot of different surveys and things that they want to get the public input from. That's very helpful for them when they're, you know, deciding on what to do next. Just on the bottom here, City of Fresno Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee, just different committees that maybe you can join their meetings. And the bottom left, I have Students for Climate. They're a new high school group in Visalia, but they're super active and super passionate. And so I really like to promote them because they want to do cleanups in local areas. You can start your own group. As far as Central Valley Young Environmental Advocates, we are really new, but we were previously Young Presidents for the Environment, and now we're kind of official and expanding to the Central Valley. We want to provide educational and networking opportunities for young people and really anyone in the Valley. We're really open to new projects. So right now we're kind of focused on our electric vehicle program that we're a part of for the Clean Vehicle Empowerment Collaborative. But yeah, we're really open to different projects if you're interested. I'll be putting our social media in the chat as well. And then finally, Zero Waste Youth USA, like I mentioned, it's the USA chapter, but most of us are located in the Bay Area, and I'm trying to bring it into Fresno. So yeah, just kind of learn about what you're interested in, try to find those groups, and join public meetings to stay up to date. And here's my information. Thank you, everybody.
Kamryn, thank you very much. And so you'll share this in the chat, and then we'll have a chance to follow up. So thanks again. And our next presenter is Keyshaun. Keyshaun, take it away.
Okay, my name is Keyshaun White. Hi, everybody. And just first off, excuse me, I have my daughter with me. So if you hear little grunts and groans, that's just her in the back. A little background on myself. I'm an environmental justice advocate. I'm mostly embedded in the southwest side of Fresno. I fight for environmental justice and environmental equality. And now, sorry I wasn't able to present a PowerPoint, but I have some speaking notes I'm gonna switch to. So what environmental issue affects youth in the Central Valley? So for the most part, industry in the southwest side, especially, I'm not sure if y'all familiar with the industrial triangle. So the industrial triangle is pretty much a group of factories that's kind of in a triangle shape to one another. That is not too far from Orange Grove Elementary School. Orange Grove Elementary School. And not only that, it's also a train. So background story, when I was first kicking into my monitoring system, we did a test out there. So already knowing that in the area, the AQI wasn't going to be the best. So with that, when we started the test, it was the first AQI we recorded was okay. Now, what was interesting was when the train flew past, the AQI spiked to from red to the deep purple. Now, that right there shows that in this train been here for years, so generations. So and not only that, the family and kids don't know how much harm is it doing to our bodies. So I feel personally that one of the biggest things we need to do is get these factories away from this school and get relocated in whole. And also, starting with the factory, we can move on towards the railroad tracks. I understand that's probably gonna be a bigger fight. I'm sorry. Hold on 1 second, please. Sorry. I am so sorry.
No, there's more important things in life than talking to us. we all believe it. So please take care of her. While we're taking a pause here, just so folks that are out there in the audience, if you want to post to the Q&A stuff you'd like our speakers to respond to, feel free to do that. And I see someone's already done that.
Okay, I'm back. Sorry.
Hey, welcome back.
Now I feel like that environmental issue is one of the big things because this is an elementary school. And their pretty much their respiratory issues are still in development, and it's really unfair for them. So, and now, how does global climate change affect us in future generations? So, with warmer water, kind of causes worse tropical storms. So as the planet heats up, the storms is going to get worse and worse, especially for the hurricane seasons, for the cities in the south, such as Florida. So, and with that, that's going to cause greater catastrophes and more homes lost. And I feel like I just figured this. Well, talking to Marcel, I just figured this out, and just for me, just figuring this out, I wonder how many people that actually live in those cities know about the correlation between warmer water and worse hurricanes. And just so with that, I actually want to create some type of project or campaign to actually acknowledge this issue. Even though we live in California, I still, like I said, the fight is with everybody. So I feel like I want to start this campaign I feel like also for me being in Central Valley, they're going to be like, oh, I didn't realize this. Let's see more about this issue and how can we help and how can we try to fix it. Now, what projects are available for youth to contribute solutions? I actually love this question. So there is so many organizations in Fresno that a lot of youth don't know about. One of them, giving a shout out to Mona with Tree Fresno. That was one of the pretty much organizations that's really embedded into helping out the frontline communities in terms of green spaces and trees. Another one is, so they're not embedded in environmental justice, but they're embedded with youth. Is Advanced Peace, which is ran by a group of mentors. Okay, hold on 1 second. A group of mentors pretty much trying to fight to keep the peace in the southwest side of Fresno, which, like Mona said, Trees is connected to peace. They're connected to peace. I feel like they're a great group to partner with. Such as myself, Healthy Fresno Air, my youth group. So like I said, I'm embedded into pretty much educating the southwest side of Fresno about the air quality that they live in day by day and the long-term health effects of living in bad air day by day. I do a lot of speaking engagements at school. I haven't been able to do as many as I wanted to ever since the pandemic has started. But for the most part, I like to go into schools and communicate about the air pollution education, such as PM 2.5 and PM 10 education, TVOC education, and then environmental justice education as a whole. And also another aspect of my program is monitoring. What me and my mentor have done, a couple years back, we have created a monitoring system for Fresno, which is embedded into the Fresno Unified School District high schools. So we partnered with the high schools and was able to put purple air quality monitors at all the high schools. And with that, we were able to not only teach the youth, but the community about the actual AQI that they're breathing in minute by minute. And so with that, there's also Faith in the Valley, which is a coalition of different churches, pretty much to fight for inclusion with Black and brown youth and minorities.
Keyshaun, thank you. Could I ask you, as we move on to our next speaker, would you put a couple of those things in the chat if you can, especially the Healthy Fresno Air group that you're working with? That if folks want to get in touch with you or get involved, this would be a great way to share that information.
Okay.
And hopefully your daughter is okay. Well, maybe we'll hear from her again later. That's okay.
Yes.
Thank you very much. So let's move on to Destiny. Destiny, I have your PowerPoint, right? So let me pull that up. And then Ben, remember, you're going to help make it so that they can see me or see her and the slideshow from my screen, right?
Okay, I'll go ahead and start, Andrew.
Yeah.
So hi, everybody. My name is Destiny Rodriguez. I'm the Regional Community Relations Manager for the Climate Center. I've been with this nonprofit for about 3.5 years. I'm also a Fresno State alumni, so it's really great to be here with students and faculty and community members. Prior to that, I worked in nonprofits for 15 years of my life. I've worked to protect, inform, and advocate for my community. In the years of my community work, I've supported many strategic policies and objectives, working with policymakers and allied organizations so that we can have more equitable strategies. Next slide, please. So now I work for the Climate Center, and just a little bit about us. So we are a 501c3 nonprofit. We are statewide, and we are a climate and energy policy nonprofit. We've been around for 20 years now. We were established in Santa Rosa. I live here and work in the Central Valley in Fresno. And we've also led efforts resulting in Sonoma County becoming the first county in the nation with all its cities and county committed to a measurable emission reduction. We're also responsible in playing a key role in growing community choice energy in California from just 2 CCAs. Now we are at 23, and of those 23, they are serving over 11 million residents in the state of California with 88% clean energy. Next slide, please. So we believe in thriving, healthy communities, and the Climate Center envisions a future where everyone in California can enjoy equal access to climate solutions, from clean air, clean water, and renewable energy, healthy food, and more. California has the tools and the know-how to make this vision a reality. Now we just need our elected leaders to act with urgency to address the climate crisis as it demands. And California needs to put policies in place by 2025 so that we can accelerate equitable climate action to put us on track so that we can remove more climate pollution than we admit while securing resilient communities for all by 2030. Working together, we can ensure California leads once again toward a climate safe future for all. Next slide. So a little bit more on the Climate Center. We are the only organization that's solely focused on accelerating climate timelines based on science. We are also responsible for policy and mobilizing expertise, especially in the growth of community choice energy agencies. We have also been a key influence for Governor Gavin Newsom's recent CARB order to make us carbon neutral. And we also work with businesses, local governments, and labor unions, and of course, nonprofits. Next slide. So our house is on fire. We are at risk at every level. So what are we doing about it? Next slide. So right now we are at 9 of 15 global tipping points that are creating a domino effect. Initially a hothouse climate effect. And I'm sure most people here in the Central Valley are pretty aware that our weather has been changing. We have been experiencing a lot of microclimates where one area of Fresno will have rain, another may not. One area could be inundated with high winds, another maybe a little bit has higher temperatures. And a lot of it has to do with things that are going on a global level. And this trickles down to a local level. Next slide. Actually, we can skip that one. I think people know we're in a drought, even though we just had rain the other day, but we definitely need more rain to get out of the drought. So this is just a picture, and this indicates that we had over 700,000 lightning strikes in 15 hours. And this was in June of 2021. And it's just, it's crazy, the things that we're experiencing now. These are things that I never thought in my lifetime I would see. And I'm sure most of you being young, probably never thought you would be experiencing these things either. Next slide. So to answer one of the questions of what environmental issues affect youth in the Central Valley, it directly affects your health, especially vulnerable communities of color. I mean, where you live, where you work, the air that you breathe, the water that you drink, this all has an impact on your health. And as Kamryn mentioned earlier, we are experiencing more extreme heat days, and extreme heat kills more people in the United States than any other type of hazardous weather. And unfortunately, it will likely become deadlier due to climate change. Next slide. So unfortunately, we also have fracking that occurs in our southern region of the valley. Most people know as Kern County and Bakersfield. Last Thursday, Governor Newsom's administration did take a step forward in banning new oil and gas wells within a 3,200 feet buffer zone of homes, schools, and healthcare facilities, which is great. And we are very excited to hear that. Still, the new restrictions are probably not going to go into effect until 2023. Next slide. So the Climate Center has a great campaign. It's called Climate Safe California. And next slide. And basically, we want to accelerate the phase out of fossil fuel development while also ensuring a just transition. We want to scale up nature-based sequestration, as Mona was talking about, planting more trees, so that we can sequester some of this carbon that we have in the air. And we also want to invest in community resilience, building energy storage, microgrids, and then also funding all the climate action. You can go ahead and skip, go ahead, skip again. Well, let's go ahead and skip to the end because I don't want to take up too much time. So basically, one of the things that youth can do today is you can endorse our Climate Safe California campaign. We really need Central Valley voices to support this accelerated aggressive climate policy so that we can also inspire other states and counties for greater action so that we can create a climate safe Earth. And you can go ahead and skip to the end, and there's my information. Oh, keep going. There we go. There's my information. If people are interested in reaching out, I would love to have a conversation with you. And I'm sure that we'll have more time to talk about other ways that you can get involved. And Kamryn did mention the Central Valley Young Environmental Advocates. I also sit on that organization as well. And we would love to have more students involved. Thank you.
Thank you, Destiny. This is great to just hear about all these resources and ways that people can get involved. So feel free to, again, to share in the chat. And then Feng, we're going to go over to you. And maybe I'm hoping you might maybe give a couple clues about how Fresno State, if there's anything on Fresno State's campus also. So Feng, the floor is yours.
Thank you. So I want to make sure that I'm not being too repetitive, so I'm not going to go over the kind of things that the other panelists have mentioned, but I just want to kind of give the perspective that I had when I started at Fresno State. And as mentioned, I am a master's student in geology, and I want to kind of talk about how I came to love geology and why I ended up choosing that as a major, because I knew I liked science, but it wasn't really until I started learning about water problems in the valley that I really found geology to be the thing that I really felt like was like my calling. And I think in general, a lot of people probably just don't know, what geology is and how geology kind of contributes to environmental solutions. But for me, I had to take a mineralogy course, which is actually taught by my advisor. And he gave this story of how when he was a postdoc, he was working on this project using his knowledge of minerals to clean water. And for me, that was like, I was like, wow, like that is what I want to do. And so it was from learning about that experience, his experience with that, and kind of just learning more about geology that really influenced how I kind of became so entrenched in environmental issues. And so, going back to what environmental issues affect our Central Valley, obviously, yeah, clean access to clean water is a huge issue. As far as we know, the only statistic we have for how many people don't have access to water is nearly 1 million Californians don't have access to clean water. And I mean, that statistic was from a few years ago. So we don't know if that has necessarily gone up. It probably has, but even if you have, so a lot of the people who are most at risk when it comes to water issues are people who have their own like personal wells that supply their household activities. And because they have to pump their own groundwater, they don't necessarily like monitor the quality of the water coming out of their well. It's kind of it's the homeowner's like personal responsibility to check what is in their water. And I know from my own family, they just don't care what's in their water. They just use it anyway. And it's so weird to me because I feel like as a scientist, I want to know everything I possibly can about anything, especially, something I'm putting in my body. But I know for a lot of other people, it's not really a concern to them. But in the Valley, I mean, we have a myriad of water quality issues. There's high proportions of nitrates because we are so agriculturally rich. Nitrates come from fertilizers and just general like farm activities, which is not necessarily a new thing. Pretty much all the nitrate in our water it was a result of farming in like the 50s and 60s. So it's not necessarily that it's like current day practices, although it could still be. It's just kind of our history that we're dealing with, which has kind of been something that the other panelists have kind of mentioned too, is we're really just trying to undo the history of our land, and other water quality issues that our residents face. Wells going dry is also a huge problem, because in the valley, we pump so much groundwater to make up for living in a drought-ridden state. A lot of personal wells have gone dry just because there's just not any more water in that specific like subsurface reservoir that they're pumping from. And the people who, like Mona kind of showed, come from these disadvantaged communities are not really able to afford other sources of clean water, whether that be drilling a new well, which is extremely expensive and also just difficult to even do because of state permits and things. You know, the easiest option is just buying your own bottled water, and that's expensive, and also gets to be obviously like not the most sustainable thing when we're having to buy like plastic bottles, which I realize you know, is such a tiny subset of the problem. But the water in the valley is such a huge issue, and because we also pump so much groundwater, we have basically contributed to subsidence in the valley, because the ground surface of the valley in some places has lowered as much as 9 feet, and obviously that's not uniform everywhere. It's just in some of the worst places, which I believe is in the Kern County again. And so the valley is going to be dealing with that as a problem in itself, because allowing so much subsidence damages the infrastructure that we rely on to actually transport water across the state the way that we do, because we transport surface water from the Delta to farmland, or from the Delta to LA, or we rely on water conveyance systems in order just to be productive, to live. And so we have to remember that while yes, agriculture is important and very much a part of our economy, we have to make sure that we're making sustainable decisions and ensuring that we're not going to run into other environmental challenges in the process.
Feng, could I just jump in and just ask if you could take us to the answer of how can people get involved, or what can folks do, and then maybe we could wrap up our initial round and then have more of a conversation among our panelists. So what would you like, to that last question, what can young people do, or Fresno State students do, to get involved in these kind of issues?
Yeah, so first off, I want to just say that going to college and getting a higher education degree is always a great thing, but it's not necessarily the only way that you can help. Solving the environmental crisis is definitely going to require people from all different professions and backgrounds. We're going to need like politicians, lawyers, psychologists, sociologists, scientists, just everybody from all kinds of different backgrounds to be able to kind of come together to solve these like extremely complex problems. But for Fresno State students specifically, I always recommend joining a club just to be able to kind of be more informed around opportunities. The Sustainability Club is a great resource to utilize at Fresno State. They've been really active and have really opened a lot of doors for student activities. And I can see Dr. Weinman just put something in the chat. You can, as for me, I was part of the Geology Club on campus. You can join both of the clubs by going to the universities cite Engage, and just by searching the clubs in their search function there and joining. And then on top of that, I am part of the student-led sustainability task force at Fresno State. And we, as a task force, are always graduating our students. So we are definitely going to be needing to find some more students to be able to kind of continue the work that we're doing. So if you are interested in that, you can reach out to me, or you can reach out to Dr. Weinman, who's also putting more things in the chat. So I can put my email in there right now.
Yeah, great. Yeah, if you don't mind sharing your contact information too, maybe folks can get in touch with you. Well, so thank you to all of our presenters there. I mean, there was a lot of information there. We've got a few questions in the chat and the Q&A. If you're watching on the audience, feel free to type a question in. I wonder, one thing I heard that each one of you sort of touched on was this topic, environmental justice. And I at least like 2 or 3 of you used the word, and I think every one of you was talking about it. Could you help the audience, like, what does that mean, environmental justice? And then we already heard some examples about how it plays out. And I just couldn't help, like, back to Mona. Mona said that trees reduce stress and violence, which it makes sense. But I mean, this is interesting how all these things are connected to social issues and so on. So can I just open the floor, maybe have a discussion about environmental justice issues? Anyone want to jump in on that one?
So I'll just say, so when I was an undergrad, I took a course on domestic violence, and we were it was a like Saturday course, 1 unit thing. And we had this assignment where we had to relate our major to the course. And I was like, geology, how in the world am I doing this? But I was able to actually find some published literature that basically had some studies that showed that domestic violence went down in communities that had more green space and just were more covered in trees. So that was really eye-opening to me. And like you said, it makes sense that just generally, and this is also shown in lots of other studies, but people are just more calm. People are happier when they're in green spaces. And it can help with your anxiety. It can help with general, like increasing the peace in an area.
Mona, is that what you had in mind with that? Is that what your organization was talking about, those issues?
Absolutely. Interestingly enough, I was actually looking at an article that was profiling Keyshaun, and him referring to basically a study that was done. It started actually in West Africa, profiling or studying areas that were more urban and more violence, more stricken with violence in other areas. And they realized that levels of pollution could possibly contribute to more incidences of violence. Isn't that right, Keyshaun?
Yeah. And also another thing, so me and my mentor was going back and forth about this for years. So I was telling him that, so for some reason or some odd reason, I felt like it was just extremely hotter on the southwest side than it is on the northern side of Fresno. And now he called me out on it, like, no, it's not possible. It's not possible. And I'm like, it is. Like, I couldn't put I'll say data behind it at the time. But for some reason, I was like, it's just hotter. I can't explain it, but it is. But so I'll say probably a year and a half ago, he actually called me and apologized. Like, oh, there's a study called a heat island that shows that in urban areas in frontline communities that has less green spaces and less trees, it's going to be hotter than other areas that has green spaces and trees. And I was, it was a big, I told you so moment, but I took it as something we got to change it. We got to fix this. How can we possibly create a different environment for the Southwest side. So, because if no one actually realized that heat makes us really irritable.
Right, aggressive. It does.
Yeah, it makes it really irritable, and I'll say you can kind of act without thinking when you're in the heat because you just so irritated. So yeah, I feel like the heat island, and also with, I won't say crime necessarily speaking, but aggression in the community kind of does get lowered with green spaces and cooler air.
Mhm. Yeah, and the article that I was referring to as well, because obviously you have the heat islands and then you have the pollution factor, right?
Mhm.
So literally,
Yeah.
you know, our bodies are being, you know, permeated with pollutants, which also makes people sick, right?
Yes.
And the lifespan shorter, the quality of life, and again, irritable because we're human beings, right? So, and I love that, and I'll tell these folks that, you know, Keyshaun and I have sort of collaborated on a Green Team Youth Ambassador program, and that's actually working towards planting more trees in Southwest Fresno, Southeast Fresno, areas where they're under-treed. So by engaging the community. So as I mentioned before, you know, I'm an old Peace Corps volunteer. So that means that, you know, the focus needs to be on engaging people in the education and the work. And when I found Keyshaun already working in this sector for like many years, I'm really excited about the potential for collaboration. And when we're talking about youth engagement, this is what the future is. So Treat Fresno believes that, you know, the future is not just me going in and planting trees with my organization, but community members like Keyshaun and his friends, like caring about trees, understanding the value of trees, and advocating for more trees in the community.
Mona, this John Minkler had posed this in the Q&A. What activities would students do with organizations? So, like, one obvious we just heard is students can plant trees or work with the organization to plant trees. That seems kind of like get your hands dirty and do something kind of cool. Really, you can see the result right there. There's the tree. What else is Destiny or Kamryn or Keyshaun or Feng? What if someone was like, I want to get involved? What would they be doing? Writing letters to legislators? Like, what is it that happens when you start getting involved in this kind of stuff?
So yes, there are many ways to get involved. One of which I would say is pay attention to what happens at City Council, pay attention to the County Board of Supervisors meetings. There are a lot of opportunities where people can speak publicly if there is something that is being built in your neighborhood. Like, for example, in Kern County, there are oil refineries right next to people's homes. And so if, you know, and I'm not saying we have that here, thank goodness, but if there is an industry polluter that is going to be, you know, contracted to be built in your neighborhood and you don't know about it, they're going to build in your neighborhood and you're going to be exposed to that daily. So pay attention to what goes on at the city, pay attention to what happens at the county, because it does have an effect on you. And as a constituent, you have a right to have a public opinion, and you have a right to let your elected leaders know what your thoughts are.
Yeah, and following Destiny with that, you know, making sure that people in disproportionately affected areas have a voice and that they know what's going on. With Central Valley Young Environmental Advocates, even though we've just started, we actually signed on to a letter that was sent to the federal EPA to talk about the air pollution that's happening in the Central Valley to address these issues. You know, we feel like we've been left behind, and so signing on to letters, we'll be doing cleanups and looking for grants to specifically address the issues that we're experiencing in the valley, like air pollution, water pollution.
I'd also like to mention, those are great suggestions, by the way. I think advocacy, right? It's for me to be able to plant more trees, for us to be able to take advantage of the opportunities which exist, we need people to collaborate with us, cities to collaborate with us, and want to do it. So I feel that if someone is inclined to go to a city council meeting, If someone wants to contact their local city council member and talk to them about the issue that's important to them and their community, I would highly encourage that because it makes a difference. That's my experience. Is it's actually much more effective for Keyshaun to talk to his local representative than it is for me. So I would encourage that because that's how we move the needle in the community.
So you guys are talking about like be a democratic citizen, which is always a good idea, I think, in our world today. But let me just push it a little bit, because here's like I can hear some, high school kids, college students thinking, well, that's what adults do. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know. Like there's a kind of feeling like all those decisions happen over and above us. Can you help maybe explain why maybe a young person actually could find this, find a way to make an impact? And I'm really thinking in the background, there's that Greta Thunberg example of, I mean, she's a Nobel Prize celebrity, so we don't have to be her, but somewhere between the overwhelmed 16-year-old and Greta Thunberg, I think is probably where most of us. Anyone want to address that kind of feeling, being overwhelmed with all this? Keyshaun?
Oh yeah, I feel like that's the question that best suits me. So me embarking in my journey of advocacy work as a young man, for one, I understand the feeling of being overwhelmed and the feeling of not knowing what to do in the spaces. Because when you're in these spaces, you're around individuals with masters and PhDs and all that, and then you just start kind of overthinking it. But when you really take time to learn and find a passion into something, which was for me was pretty much environmental justice, it's become so easier, and one, for speaking to one another about the situation, and two, just for yourself to just sit back and self-reflect about what you want to do in this space. So what I can say personally for a youth as young as 16 that wants to get involved is find the right group of people. Find the right group of mentors that is one to pretty much nurture your passion and be able to create something with you, and take time, because it's really kind of hard to work with teenagers because our mindsets at the time is very everywhere, or pretty much our brains be everywhere. So it's kind of hard to dial in sometimes and focus on one thing. But if you have a mentor with the patience and the ability to teach you at your own speed and at your own time, and kind of create your space for you to enjoy it, then instead of just on top of you all the time, it becomes so much fun. Like I loved it, and then you get connected with so many different people. So I got connected with what's Sunrise, the Sunrise movement. So Sunrise is pretty much it's an ENJ organization. I'm not sure where they actually embedded at. They have hubs all over the United States. But so when I connected with these group, and they're young individuals from age ranges from 15 to 25. So I was going out of the state training with them and just meeting all these young, incredible people that's all fighting the same thing. So I feel like exposure is another thing for young advocates, is to be exposed to other young advocates in different states, in different cities, because it just opens your mind to so many different issues that's not only in your city, that shares in your city, but also different issues.
Kamryn, I see you nodding. You want to add something there?
Yeah, definitely. I agree with everything that Keyshaun said. I think the main thing is to become aware and educate yourself. And if you want to pursue higher education, get your education, and continue to work in the Valley. But as Mona was saying, it's important to have people, boots on the ground people, and then also to have people who are pushing the policy, pushing the legislation. And so that's what I hope that my group, CVYA, is doing, is that we're connecting all the groups together to see, what do we need? Okay, you guys are doing this boots on the ground work, and what do we need to push on the legislation side to really meet our goals and to, really help the Valley.
Destiny, looked like you wanted to add something also.
I was just in agreement with Kamryn, with Central Valley Young Environmental Advocates. We definitely want to connect youth with other opportunities to get involved, to get engaged, to be informed. And we also would like to do some trainings. I mean, these are things that we're in the works of. But ultimately, I think the message here for youth is get involved. Get involved, whether it's with a club, an internship, a meeting, get involved.
Someone in the Q&A, Yulia, the question she poses is, do you support the use of extreme protest methods to save the environment? That's a kind of pointed, kind of tough question, but let maybe broaden that just a little bit. What about like marches and walkouts and, like the in the streets kind of thing? So we kind of heard about, like, we could plant trees, we could work on legislation, go to city council meetings. What about that kind of activism?
Right.
An activist with a sign on the corner. Keyshaun,
So,
what do you think?
So yeah, when I was working with this group called Sunrise. So there actually is an extremist group for environmental justice. So, and the way they work is, right, so they find funds for bail, right? So when they do these, so they do a lot of sit-in or walk-ins. So I think one of the biggest ones was with Nancy Pelosi. So they had a sit-in there where I think they said around 7 of their members was arrested. So so there are groups out there that are fighting to the point to where they were willing to give up their freedom for the cause. So there are, so yeah, what I said, there are groups out there that are on that height.
Anyone else want to just address that question about like street protests and is it important for that stuff to happen, or is this really more like, we need to go to the city council meeting, or is there space here for this kind of, have a protest on the corner thing? What do you think?
Honestly, I think it's really embedded in terms of the city. So there are some states are just fed up with their decision makers, to where they feel like sitting at city council meetings aren't getting them nowhere. So that's why they're at the point of just pretty much recalling their city council. So so with that, I say it's really within the difference of the city and how fed up they are with their decision makers.
I can add to that. I think that it's good to have demonstrations, and I'm all for peaceful demonstrations. I've been involved in a few during my college years, and I think they are effective in getting visibility and getting media attention, which is great because then you have a platform to get your message out. For example, today I was actually at a press conference that was a demonstration for protecting our farm worker communities and our children from toxic pesticides. That happened early today. And it was a peaceful demonstration. We stood in the parking lot of the Department of Pesticide Regulation with signs held up saying that we need better protections for our community's health. And so I do think things like that are good for visual effect and good at getting messaging out and getting attention. But also I think it's equally important to have conversations with elected leaders and to be involved at city hall and at county board of supervisors, because ultimately they are the policy makers. So we need to make sure that they are aware if they might have missed the news or the demonstration. This is a way to ensure that they have your attention.
I'm just looking at our clock, and we want to end at 5:15. So I maybe if we could sort of head towards a couple of concluding thoughts. And so here's actually what I'm thinking is, and I think it was Destiny, you were pointing out that we've hit 9 of 15 tipping points. And was it your slideshow that showed the house on fire? Or was that, I mean, there's a sense like like almost we're beyond the point of no return. And there, I think especially, I mean, I've talked with my own children about this, a sense that the old folks have screwed the world up, and the young folks have a kind of sense of hopelessness, of despair, of like, you know, when will young people get a chance to solve these problems, because the old people keep screwing it up and won't get out of the way. So I guess my question for you all, I'd love to hear your thoughts about this, is about hope in all of this. How do you not get overwhelmed? And all the stuff we talked about, from, you know, subsidence in the valley, you know, we're running out of water and we've got forests burning down. And I mean, it can really be overwhelming. And I worry sometimes, you know, a 16-year-old or a 25-year-old is like, oh, forget it, I don't know what I can do. This is just, you understand my question? I'm wondering, maybe we could have each of you sort of think about hope and action, and how that works. Anyone want to jump in and start that off?
This is Mona. Can you hear me?
Go ahead, Mona.
Can you hear me?
Go ahead, Mona.
Yes, I'd like to make a comment on that. I would say the strength is the togetherness. So we need to come together when we can. If there's a young person or a person who has an interest in a particular global climate matter, they need to find a nonprofit or a CBO that's working in that, and ask how they can become involved and engage in that work, because that is what's going to advance us, is if we start working together. I think that's strength, and we shouldn't just crumble under the pressure. We will be planting trees until the day we can no longer plant trees at Tree Fresno, and I invite anybody to do that with us, and I encourage others to join other organizations in their task at hand as well. So thank you.
Thanks, Mona. I'm just kind of on my screen, I'm seeing Keyshaun. Here's what I'm seeing: Keyshaun, Feng, Destiny, and then Kamryn. Keyshaun, you want to give us what's your thoughts about hope and hopelessness and concluding remarks?
So I feel like as long as we have people such as myself, young individuals that really just want to change their community just to see a better outcome, I feel like it's never going to be a hopeless situation unless we all just throw in the towel and say, forget this. And so as long as we have young individuals that even has the slightest curiosity of what's going on in their community, it's never going to be hopelessness. But I just could say there could be more engagement with I like to call them adult allies. So pretty much older individuals that's already been in the work. So if there's more engagement with adult allies, with youth, I feel like there will be a better outcome with youth that actually gets involved. So it's kind of blunt thing to say. We got to kind of get on our adult allies.
Yeah, we can be better allies. I think that's a good point. Feng, what do you want to contribute to this?
So I definitely agree with what Keyshaun and Mona just said. Just want to add that, you know, if you kind of give in to the hopelessness and don't do anything, like that is exactly like how progress, you know, stops. And so it's kind of similar to just kind of the democratic process. Like, I know it's frustrating, but like, if we don't do it, then we actually have no control over what happens. So I just wanted to add one little point of kind of relating back to the valley. The valley used to be a very lush, green kind of wetland area. And you know, we don't necessarily look like that anymore, but when people who study wetlands have basically found that you can still revive wetlands, you can still bring back the biodiversity. You know, it's not necessarily that, you know, it's the water's gone, you know, things are all kind of doom and gloom. You can restore nature. So you know, with that said, just, you know, I just want to give people some hope to know that, like, we can still act now. Like we can still do things to help our environment and help our people.
I like that, the resilience of nature. That's, I think, important, really important message. Destiny?
I think that there's a lot of hope here with this panel and in what's being presented today and what's being done in our community. And I think that we should just continue to move forward because we have to move forward. And if we can move forward with hope and resilience in our hearts and put that into action, climate action, then I think that will be okay. But we just have to keep moving forward with that positive attitude and not let it get us down.
Thank you, Destiny. Appropriate name there for the thinking about the future. Kamryn.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, this, climate change is such a big issue, and it's really going to take all of us coming at this issue from different angles and chipping away. So, whatever skills and interests you can bring to the table, start chipping away, from your point of view. With California, when we pass legislation, the other states tend to follow in terms of environmental legislation. So most recently, the governor signed a lot of amazing environmental bills to start tackling this. So yeah, I'll just say, whatever your skills and interests are, you can definitely help.
Thank you, Kamryn, and thank you everybody. I thought this was really kind of an optimistic panel. Actually, each one of you is a great example of, like, you're making a difference, you're getting involved, and you got a spirit of inquiry, and you're getting to work. I mean, it's so cool. So I hope that people watching this either live with us or in the online when we post this on our YouTube page, I hope that people take away the message of how you guys are living and behaving. It's really inspiring. So thanks to each of you. I'd also like to thank Professor Weinman, and she put something in the chat. She said Obama and Springsteen are doing this. So the hope and optimism thing, she put a YouTube link there. Former president and a rock star working on this stuff also. So just let me kind of bring us to a close and thank our panelists. And I'd like to thank John Minkler and the Civic Ed Center. And I'd like to thank Professor Weinman also, who is in the background working on this. If you're interested in these kind of events, Ethics Center events, you can follow us on Facebook or Twitter or wherever. And we keep doing these. I mean, every month there's something. So thanks to everybody, and hope everyone has a good evening. Thank you for joining us.